Hello and welcome to episode number 14. Um, this episode is called Are You Aware? And it's really interesting because on the theme that I've been kind of talking about a lot lately is what's right about me that I'm not getting, or in your case, what's right about you that you're not getting. It's been really interesting because this piece of like how aware are we, and how much do we not acknowledge that awareness. It was interesting. I had a conversation with somebody at a bars exchange that we had this week, and they were kind of looking at things, and they were kind of looking for some sort of change. And right now they live just outside, like half a block away from a hospital, and they were just talking about going to the hospital and having a friend that was in the hospital, and they could hardly get themselves to go visit their friend. And it really dawned on me in that moment, is just like, how aware are you of everything going on around you, whether it's a hospital that's half a block away or whatever that may be. Like, really, are you, and everything that goes on there energetically, all the beings that are there, maybe even entities that are hanging out, like, what are you aware of that goes on around you? And this is just like a small example of awareness that you probably don't acknowledge that you actually have. And this was something that showed up in my world as well. Like, there was something that I was looking at, and there was something that popped for me, and I was kind of joking about this one particular situation, and found out that in the end, what I thought was a joke was actually real, and it was true. And it was so weird because in that moment I couldn't not acknowledge. I'm like, wow, what was I aware of? What did I know in that moment? And instead of really acknowledging it, I made a joke of it, which is interesting as well. And so it's really neat to see that we maybe think that things couldn't be what we perceive, and yet what if they were? What if what we perceive is, and we are willing to acknowledge that perceiving, that we actually do know things and that we are aware? And how much would that change your world if you would start to acknowledge all the things that you see, instead of brushing them off or disregarding them, or also making them more intense in some ways, like this person at the bars exchange. They were acutely, it was so apparent that they were acutely aware of all the energies going on in the hospital, and for them in their moment, it was so intense. And it was almost like your awareness can be really intense, in the sense that a lot of people try to turn it off, because they think that it's going to be too much, or that if they acknowledge that they are that aware of everything, that they might explode or something like that. And what if it was the opposite, actually? And I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me, sorry about that. What if it's the opposite of what it appears? Everything's the opposite of what it appears to be, and nothing's the opposite of what it appears to be. So it's really this thing where, what if our awareness isn't too much? What if it could never be too much? What if we actually are aware of so many different things that we just simply don't want to know that we know? And how many places in your world does that show up? Does it show up in the sense of you look at all the places that you cut off your awareness where you don't want to know, and this is where the acknowledgement of what you're aware of shows up. What if you were actually willing to know and acknowledge your true awareness and how aware you truly are, and just by your being the awareness that you be, and play with that a bit, like really ask questions. What am I not willing to be aware of? And it can be like, what am I not willing to be aware of me? What am I not willing to be aware of about the people around me? What am I not willing to be aware of in the environment that I'm in right now? What am I not willing to be aware of in regards to whatever you choose, in regards to money, in regards to maybe your job, in regards to your relationship, in regards to your family? It can go on and on and on. And what if you were willing to be aware? What would that change, and how much ease would that actually create in your world? Because I think the misconception is that if we are aware, it's going to be difficult. And that's just a point of view. What if it actually created way more ease in your world? Yeah, you'd be willing to acknowledge everything that shows up and all that you can perceive that you currently are not willing to look at. And how much ease would that create in your world if you actually chose that? And that's one of the things that has been sort of bouncing around in my world. The willingness to see what is, the willingness to be aware of what is in my world, be aware of what I'm actually choosing. And there was another thing that kind of struck me the other day. Hello, hi. The other thing that struck me the other day was being willing to also not only be aware, and not only to be willing to be to perceive, but also to use that and actually act on it. And so one of the places for me, this actually happened yesterday. I do some stock trading, and I was trading, looking to do a couple of trades, and I had this moment of hesitation, and then I asked a couple of questions, which I actually used against myself, which is quite brilliant. And so in the end, I didn't actually choose to do this particular trade, while still knowing that it was going to be good, and it did turn out to work quite well, even in a very short period of time, and it was a short-term trade. And so it's really interesting when I look at that. I look at where am I not willing to be aware, or to look at what I perceive and be willing to acknowledge that what I perceive actually is, instead of kind of going into the wrongness in whichever way you do that. So it was really interesting to see for me. It was really neat to play with that, and also to see what else is possible with that. And I get that is something that I do get to play with, and actually that's one thing that I love about stock trading, is that for me anyways, it is very much about using my awareness to get in and out. And you can use all these different components, and you can use also technical things and so on, and you actually know a tremendous amount. And if you're willing to know what you know, what can show up. And so these are just like some small examples of what I go through in a daily basis, and sometimes not choose. And again, it doesn't hurt not to, in this particular case, do this trade. I mean, I didn't lose anything, but but I was really annoyed with myself because I didn't actually listen to what I knew. I didn't actually pay attention to my knowing. I didn't acknowledge my knowing. And it's interesting when we do that, it's really this amazing place where we are really good at doing the invalidation of being, where we invalidate ourselves. You don't need anyone else to do it. You can do it yourself just great. And so this place where you do invalidate yourself, and what that creates in your world. And I know for me, by choosing that, I went into this space of being grumpy again, which is a choice. And so then I got to play with that a bit and look at what else was possible in it. And in that moment, I wasn't really willing to change it. And so what I did do, I was asked some questions of like, what would I like to do for fun? And so we ended up going out, and I ended up having chocolate, actually a hot chocolate and some cake, which I love. But it was just choosing something different in that moment too, that changed the space. And also in that in that particular situation for me too, it was actually physically choosing something different, actually choosing to go somewhere else, do something different that created something different in my world. And it's really fun to do that. Like, it's really cool to play with that and to ask some questions. And it may be more of a question of what else can I choose in this moment, and just choosing to go and do something else sometimes is all that's required. And that was definitely what it was for me yesterday. And so again, it's like, it really is this, like, how aware are you that you've never been willing to acknowledge? And are you willing to be fully and totally aware? Are you willing to be all of you, to show up and choose something different? And what was really cool for me, using this example of stock trading, is it really got me looking at what I'm choosing right now. And I'm like, man, I am choosing something different. And it was really fun to see that. It was really fun, like, how a situation like that can show up and kind of like shake you a little bit and get you out of whatever space you're in, and go, wow, like, I can actually choose something different. And if I was doing that, what would I actually choose? Would I actually choose this? And for me, I realized that was, no, I'm not going to continue choosing not to engage, not to acknowledge my perceiving and my knowing and my awareness. And so, and being aware of what can change with that, and how I can play different. And I looked at all the places that I was actually stopping myself, and it wasn't like a cognitive thing. It wasn't a place where I was like, oh, I did, I chose here, and I like specifically stopped myself. I looked back and looked at what I was aware of and what was required to make it happen, and then looked at what I actually ended up choosing. And then I'm like, okay, so I really have to choose something different in order to actualize what I know is possible, and actualize what I would actually like to create. And so, what is it that you know? What is it that you perceive in your world that you actually do know that by choosing whatever that thing is would change the way you are? And what if you actually chose that you haven't been choosing? And it's really that demand of yourself, and it's really that looking and playing with something different. And for what was interesting in my world with that, when I started really looking at it, I was looking at how I have in the past used other people to stop me, or that's how I would stop myself, was use other people in so many different ways. And what I mean by use them is like, oh, I was supposed to do this with that person, so I won't choose to do something different. Or, as aware, I should have said in that moment that I had to go take care of this, and I chose not to. Instead, ended up doing what I had continued doing. And so it was like these they're actually just little moments in your life where you're like, those are the little moments that make up your life. Those are the little 10 seconds that are required to choose something different for something else to show up. And that is really what became super apparent to me yesterday, was this like, where am I not choosing? And I'm using all these excuses that I'm maybe not verbalizing to not choose what I know would create a different life for me. And also being aware of like what energy, space, and consciousness can me and my body be, to actually be the energy of what it is that I know I can create in this world, and what I've come to create, and what I like to choose, and what I like to do different. And also, what if it could show up in a completely different way? What if it does show up in a completely different way? And what if you didn't have a point of view of how it shows up? I know that sticks many people all the time. Like, really, this no point of view thing is kind of amazing. It kind of creates a lot of space for all these different possibilities to show up. And so with all your knowing, what can you choose with it? How many different things could you actually create with it? And how much fun could it actually be? How much fun could you have with this all? And what I mean by this all, it is your life. What fun could you have with your life and play with something completely different? And maybe it isn't something completely different in your world either. Maybe it is just these small sort of wisps or whispers of change that maybe don't look like your life is that different, yet you are very different. And it's really all these little things that show up that change the way you look at the world. Yeah, the strong mental, the calculations, the computations, the projections. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like we have this thing that, it's supposed to be a certain way, and what if it isn't? And what was really neat, I was talking to my sister the other day, and she just realized that in her world, in one of her worlds, I should say, she was aware that there was people in a group of her world that didn't see the possibility, or didn't see a lot of possibility in the world. And it really surprised her, because she doesn't spend a lot of time in this particular world with this particular group of people. And I'm like, so have you acknowledged how much you have changed? And it's kind of fun when we're presented with that, where you're presented with all these different things, and you become aware of how much you've actually changed by being in a situation like that. And how much possibility actually are you? that you weren't a year ago, or you weren't even 6 months ago, or you weren't even 2 months ago, or you weren't even 10 seconds ago. It is really amazing how much we do change and we don't actually see that, because it is all these little 10-second choices, like I was talking earlier, these little whispers of things that you do, maybe just slightly different, or you are just a different energy with something or somebody. And as you start being that difference or being that different, and it may only be very small differences, that's how you end up changing the world. And it's really neat that when you maybe are with people that you aren't with a lot or haven't seen for a while, and you spend time with them, you can see, you're like, wait a second, things are different. What is that? And you look at it and you realize, oh, in that moment, that what you perceive and what you're aware of and what you see in the world is maybe way more than what most people are willing to see. And in a lot of cases, it's not that people can't see what you see. They're choosing not to. And in some cases, they can't. In a lot of cases, it's just a choice. It's, we're back. So I had a little interlude there, a little internet outage. So I was saying, it's just this choice of choosing something different, and choosing, the difference is choosing to be aware. And what if that's kind of all it was? What if it is just that, so what would it be like if I chose to be fully and completely aware of everything? And actually, how much fun could that be? And how much ease could that create in my world? Because again, most people have a point of view that being really aware is difficult or challenging or hard or uncomfortable or whatever it is. What if it was the exact opposite? What if it was tons of space, tons of ease, and tons of fun? What if it was something completely different than what you thought it was? And what would it take to choose that? What would it be like to actually choose that? And what else would be possible if you actually chose to be aware and to perceive and know and acknowledge that? And how much different could you be in the world by actually choosing that? And are you willing? And what's stopping you? And so really, my invitation is to ask some of these questions and play with it and acknowledge your awareness and your perceiving and your knowing and your being and your receiving. Receiving. And see what else is possible with that. And play with that. And see if you can't create something different in your world. And what if you could go way beyond this reality and be way more and be greater than you currently are? And is the world waiting? So what else is possible? Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and let me know of any possibilities that show up, any changes, any shifts that show up in your world. And I'll play with you again next week, same time. Awesome. Have an awesome week. Bye.